our friends at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That's Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, Baseline Road. Give us a chance to blow off a little steam. We invite you to bring us your hottest takes to ramp it up. These are all real emails from talk@ryanjesperson.com. That's where we're pulling these from. That's our inbox. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. And this one from Sue, who writes in, this is Sue's budget coverage. Sue says, I am flabbergasted that this government has canceled plans to build that new hospital in South Edmonton. Edmonton hasn't had a new hospital built since the Grey Nuns. We're talking the 1980s. It shouldn't have been a choice between the Stollery and the South Edmonton Hospital. We need both. And I know that they're trying to sell this as fiscal responsibility and saving for the future, but what it's really doing is stealing the future from Edmontonians and rural communities around. They'll fail to get proper and timely health care. What the government needs to do is collect an appropriate level of taxes, most especially corporate, says Sue, to ensure that we can build proper infrastructure. We can also maybe cancel that war room. Not really a thing anymore. Stop paying for advertising to convince Albertans of their terrible policies. Stop money trying to push that Alberta pension plan. Sue, you notice it's disappearing from the, she says, what about all this marketing to Eastern Canada? What about the Calgary Arena? What about shifting responsibility for orphan wells? I could go on and on, says Sue. How about you guys focus on health and education and stop focusing on political ideology? That from Sue. I love this one from Melvin, who says, guys, I love the show. I thought your interview with the Prime Minister was fantastic. I'm not a fan of the guy at all, but he was articulate and actually made some good points, says Melvin. The reason I'm reaching out is to say, are you ready for this? That Johnny was right, says Melvin. During that show, he says, it might be best, Ryan, to avoid calling Newfoundlanders Newfies.
I think I know this.
He says, and I did too. Now, I want to be clear. If this is your first exposure to this controversy on Real Tech, I want to be clear. I was reading someone's comment, and ahead of reading the comment, I wondered aloud, am I allowed to say Newfie?
Yeah.
And you said, I don't think so.
My wife is half, and she tells me all the time. Some people like it, some people don't. Just avoid.
I think it's one of those things where, like, if you are a Newfoundlander, you can say it, and if you're not, you shouldn't.
Sure.
So Melvin says, I am a Newfoundlander who's lived in Alberta for quite a long time, and I've only ever heard the word used in a pejorative sense. Funny enough, though, he says, now that I'm in a more senior position in my field, nobody's using the word around me anymore. He says, now it's not the biggest issue on earth, but I figured it was worth reaching out. Have a great weekend. That from Melvin. Love it. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will no longer say the word we used to say about Newfoundlanders.
We're always learning.
Plus, Newfoundlander just rolls beautifully off the tongue anyway, doesn't it?
Right?
A shout out to all the Newfoundlanders that are now calling Alberta and Western Canada home. This one from G Money, who says, a public service here for you guys. After Jespo's Trudeau interview, I want to help your listeners understand something. Oh, thank you, G Money. Says, first of all, congrats on the interview. I thought it was stellar, Trudeau. However, the cracks are showing. The end is near. But I want to refocus my public service announcement here. He says, I've heard people on this show question Pierre Poilievre's rise and tactics. Now hold my beers, says G Money, while I break this down for you. Canadians are fed up with Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. They feel like they're never going to get the Prime Minister in a one-on-one to say what they really want. Even if they catch him at an event, it comes out with so much anger and rage that it doesn't make sense. That's on them, not the PMG. Says Poilievre's able to get his uninterrupted time to tell Trudeau what Canada wants to say. And also, Ryan, on this gender and trans children issue, I'm convinced that the media class knows where Canadians stand on this, but they'll take their political, personal, and ideological beliefs and cast them upon Canadians. The polls have shown the majority of Canadians want parents notified about changes in their kids' behavior, pronouns, etc. The polls have never shown any wavering in support for Poilievre when he speaks on this matter, but the media is trying to dictate what Canadians and politicians can talk about. Is that democracy? G-Money says the tides have shifted. Canadians can speak openly and freely, agree and disagree on issues, whether it's gender or economics, and vote on them. And all that talk of what's important from a set of people who voted for Trudeau based on legalizing cannabis. Okay, that from G-Money. Number one, you shouldn't vote or leave up to democracy, things involving marginalized populations. I just want to address that. And number two, let you know we got a guest coming up in the next 2 weeks. He's going to talk about a report he did for the Macdonald-Laurier Institute on where Canadians actually are on quote-unquote woke culture. Pardon me invoking the phrase. How about this one from Brian, who writes in and says, Jespo, I enjoyed your Black History Month Real Talk Roundtable, but as I listened to it, I have to be honest, I felt insulted. I'm a white guy, born and raised in Canada. I'm 65 years of age, says Brian. I've crossed paths with many people over the years from many different ethnicities and cultures. When I meet someone, I don't see color, I see character. And I resent being included in a general statement about whites being racist. I am not racist. To me, it felt like reverse racism against all the whites. Maybe your guests should rephrase their comments so that they don't come across as being racist against white people. Brian says, I've always felt when it comes to employment, government, the best person with the best qualifications should fill those positions. Now, I do realize not all people feel that, and there are real issues in this country, as well as the countries that your guests left to come to Canada. Sincerely, Brian, who signs off, peace and love. This one from kind of a highfalutin personality, Johnny. This is a tragedy. We're going to use his full name because he signs off with it. This is a flamethrower submission from Chris Flett, who's the business manager from IUOE Local 955. So we got a union leader writing in here. He says, Jespo, I appreciate the great discussions you have, the diverse viewpoints you foster. I love the show. However, he says in all caps, on my way back from Calgary, I was listening to a show featuring commentary from the Alberta Chambers of Commerce on a segment discussing Alberta's skilled talent shortage. I tuned in eagerly. This is an issue I deal with often as a labor leader in the construction trades, but I was alarmed. There's some proposals for solutions to the shortage made by the representation from the chambers. First, suggesting the fast tracking of foreign credentials as a remedy to the talent shortage is a bit rich, considering a major contributing factor to the current shortage is the skilled trades because industry stopped investing in Albertans years back by ending apprenticing when the economy tanked. Many local folks seeking a skilled trade at that time had no choice but to abandon the path because work completely dried up for apprentices, resulting in fewer Albertans getting trained, adding to the current scarcity. We need to focus on creating opportunities for kids to learn and develop skills, not on talents from other jurisdictions. Plus, the suggestion of micro-credentialing. In the trades, for example, you'd carve us up into specific crafts, minuscule tasks only, like minor welds or pulling wire or pounding rebar. You would avert folks from obtaining a well-rounded journey person's ticket. That whole trades a la carte approach could harm the good work Alberta is doing to promote rewarding careers in the skilled trades. It would roadblock kids wanting to get into well-paying trades because they would transform into lower-paid, watered-down versions of what they once were. Tens of thousands of folks across the province are proud of their journey person's tickets and the skills they've obtained in Alberta. We need to expand and protect this learning, not chop it up to save wealthy employers a few bucks. What I'm saying, says Chris Flett, is let's invest in our youth and trades as a solution, not look for ways to help inflate the already bloated waistline of corporate interest. Okay, and this one, I've been looking forward to reading this one from AY, who writes in, earmuffs kids, and says, Jespo, can you shut the fuck up about Pierre Poilievre just once? Now, real talkers, this is Jespo speaking. This is not going where you think it's going. AY says, nobody cares what your opinion is on who you would vote for the next prime minister. Number one, I've never said that on the record, unless you're going to do your fucking job and cover the facts of what he's been saying and the sort of bullshit he's been spreading. You saying you think he should be the next prime minister, which I have never said, is totally and completely fucking useless bullshit, says AY, who spends more time writing angry emails than actually listening to what talk show hosts say. AY says, maybe if you stopped LARPing as a journalist and actually pulled your head out of your ass and looked at the information freely available, you would see that Danielle Smith, David Parker, Maxime Bernier are all peddling Russian propaganda. They have been since the anti-trans march last September. Fucking Reddit revealed that the vast majority of the online support for these grotesque ideas being astroturfed through false narratives and sock puppet inflation of engagement numbers. Try reconnecting with Rachel Gilmore or even looking at her reporting on the Conservatives and how they absolutely hate the hate that they're supporting. Your blind, biased support of Conservatives in Canada, this is unreal, right? Is exactly how Hockey Canada ended up with rapists and other fuckheads in charge of things. So not only does AY pin Pierre Poilievre's prime minister rise to power on me, but I'm responsible for the Hockey Canada scandal too. AY, thanks, but no thanks. You can send us your flamethrower. Fire it up anytime at talk@ryanjesperson.com. It is proudly presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Big week coming up on the show next week. In the meantime, tell your friends to subscribe to Real Talk on the podcast, on YouTube. And of course, we'll see you back here Monday morning with Charles Adler.